Hello and welcome to the Chintan Chats. We are very lucky today. We have someone extremely unusual with us to talk to us. We have with us Vijay Dhasmana. And what is unusual about Vijay Dhasmana is that he actually is a rewilder. And we're going to talk to him. There are very few rewilders in our country. And we're going to talk to him about what this really means, both in terms of species and in terms of what it means to lead a good, rich life today for all of us. So, welcome, welcome, welcome to the Chintan Chats.
Thank you, Bharati, for inviting me for this chat.
So, let's begin right there. Let's go for the jugular. What is rewilding?
That's an interesting question because rewilding originated with faunal rewilding, which is to bring in missing species, has now become a habitat rewilding. So, what human footprint has been for the last 3 centuries or 4 centuries have been that we have eroded lots of landscapes around the world. Our species are declining, and the rewilding effort is to bring back those lands into self-sustaining mode, into what they were, perhaps. That's what is rewilding. So as simple as it is, rewilding lands, oceans, into bringing back them into making them wilderness. They're making them wild is what is the.
So, a quick question about that. How do you know what they were?
We are fortunate. There is good documentation, and the people have been recording landscapes, the vegetation, the bird life, the animal life in different landscapes. For over 3 centuries at least.
Yeah.
So we have good record as to what existed. We may not have a micro record as to in particular 100 square kilometer what was growing, but larger records we do have. There is an interesting anecdote where Dr. R.N. Parker, who's a botanist going from Gurgaon to Faridabad, he notes down and he records that there are many trees of flame of the forest, the dark trees, which are now restricted to only a few patches. So there are records, and you fall back on those records, and then there are also patches of wild which are available to you, which become kind of an indicator patches.
Reference back, really, right? Yeah. That's really interesting because it's very much like the way textiles are also restored, right? Because you do have to see what it was earlier. But let's carry on. I'm really interested in understanding how would you say this is completely different, or is it different from Miyawaki?
So Miyawaki is a very new term. Thank you for asking this question. Actually, there is lots of curiosity about Miyawaki, and it has become so popular that I think it's very difficult to kind of hold it back. It has led into a tsunami of Miyawaki projects around the country. Miyawaki is a name. There's a ecologist in Japan called Akiro Miyawaki. He came up with this idea of dense planting in Japan. Now, so far as Dr. Miyawaki has mentioned, Professor Miyawaki has mentioned in his papers, he's not talking about densities as high as 1 meter apart. So what we are getting in India is a formula, a grid pattern planting. First, what they do is very simple. They dig about a meter of the soil surface and remove all the topsoil and fill it with compost, and then plant in a grid very close of trees and shrubs and climbers together. So it's a formula. And now what happens is that it comes with a promise of 10x, which is that 10x carbon will be stored, 10x growth will be achieved, and therefore the promise of a faster forest is something that has led this engine to this vehicle of Miyawaki. Now, we don't have records. We don't have long-term records, but there are some papers internationally which are trying to equate conventional planting versus Miyawaki planting. And they say there is no benefit of Miyawaki planting in long run. In fact, it is detrimental in some cases. You do get very high growth in the initial years. You can easily understand that if you are filling 1 meter of compost, obviously the plants will grow very, very fast. But it has its impacts, because I've been watching myself one Miyawaki patch on the floodplains of Yamuna, and I have been noticing that the pioneer species are taking over the rest of the plants that have been planted over there.
Yeah.
So you can see now it's a monoculture, sort of monoculture of sorts, So the diversity is very, very less. And the stem thickness is also very, very less,
It's not really a sturdy plant.
Sturdy plant. It is not coming out to be a sturdy plant. Moreover, it's not a forest. When you say forest, you have to kind of relate to what actually naturally existed in this landscape. So our landscapes are open natural ecosystems. In fact, many other scientists have kind of written enough about India being a savanna with evergreen patches in this savanna, but it largely as a savanna. So imagine African savanna and the Indian peninsula as a savanna. And woodlands are also part of savanna, by the way. So we have to imagine our forest as we see or have been studied over time. Miyawaki does not fit into any of these natural forests that we have. The densities are too dense for our landscapes.
And it doesn't offer home to those species that would be.
Absolutely. It doesn't hold. What are we creating for? It's firstly very expensive. A same patch can be restored in 30,000 rupees, will be restored for 12 lakh rupees. So imagine there is so much of investment that goes into this. But it is popular because there is a promise of
10x.
10x. It's selling like hot potato in the country.
I find this really interesting because, one thing is people will say that I want to do something, I want to green the city, so I'm going to plant trees. And that's just like one species or two in a row, and that's the plantation. Whereas what you're suggesting is to really bring back to life an ecosystem. So I'd probably see the same insects that were there before, say, a land became degraded, whether it's by mining or whether it's just a plot of land nobody ever used, and so on and so forth. But in all cases, as far as I understand, bringing back to life isn't a 1 or 2 or 3 year process. In fact, I know because I've been to the work you've done in Gurgaon, the Gurgaon Biodiversity Park, along with the Gurgaon Municipal Corporation and other actors and corporate and non-state actors. So I've found that, in fact, you've had to grow, have nurseries in order to grow these plants because they were totally out of fashion. Because, horticulture is a different beast compared to rewilding. And then you have to plant them, and then you have to nurture them, and then you have to look after them, because basically they're not just a forest. And once you have a green patch, there's human interaction. So, in fact, I don't know about Miyawaki, but my question after this very long monologue is that you do, whether it's Miyawaki, whether it's afforestation, whether it's rewilding, you need to invest in it for the foreseeable future. Am I right?
Absolutely. You're perfectly right. The lands on which the forest exists, you have to protect those lands. So we have a wasteland atlas. We have a atlas of wasteland in the country. And if you see, there could be grasslands, they could be salt pans, they could be marshes, and not necessarily wastelands. When we say wasteland, means that human intervention has changed what the land was.
Right.
So it's the human agency which has been responsible for most of the degradation. The natural cycle of degradation, or I won't use the word degradation, but natural cycle of changing, whether it is climatic pattern, whether it is movement of sand, they have to be seen with much caution, because we have to deal with good science to understand why what is happening, and in long term how they impact. Yeah. But it's the human intervention that we can handle, where lands have become saline because of human intervention, where we have mined the areas and left those pits for somebody to come and restore them, or cut the forests in the lands and recreated urban areas or encroached on it, and so on and so forth. So, or the floodplains we have encroached upon, or the ocean coasts that we have destroyed.
Yeah.
So there are lots of lands that are available to us. India has a promise of 25 million hectares that they want to restore. So even if it is not 25 million hectares, I'm sure it is in million hectare or so, or there are some studies which are saying it's roughly 3 to 6 million hectares that need to be restored. Now, without legal protection, without a future support and protection to these lands, even if they are restored, will have no value. Like in the Aravali Biodiversity Park, we have restored this land. We have rewilded this land. We have like 70 plus species of butterflies. We have jackals, nilgais, and whatnot. We have 200 plus species of birds in that area, 300 plus species of plants, and government is thinking of a road through it. So that completely eliminates the effort that has gone in 15, 16 years into rewilding a landscape. So legal protection, seeing this as a priority for the nation, for our ecological, environmental security is very, very important. Now, once that is done, then you can go back and then do your rewilding. If it is a shrubland, you recreate a shrubland. If it was a grassland, you recreate it into a grassland. If it was a mangrove, go ahead,
And it's interesting because this obsession with planting trees, you hear people saying, I was posted in Ladakh and, I planted trees. It was all bare and then we even had a little rainfall. And to my mind, it's absolute travesty because you've actually changed a cold desert into a microclimate which is inappropriate for the fauna and flora. And also you've intervened in the wrong way. Do you agree with that?
That's a very right reading of the situation. Planting has become like anybody can do planting. It's no more a science, There are people who are planting fig species in Jaisalmer, whatnot, exotic trees in very dry landscapes. And Ladakh, for instance, people are planting all kinds of trees there. Miyawaki patches there in Ladakh.
Oh, gosh.
Now, so the understanding is warped and it's not backed by science. So I think we have to kind of fall back into science, and at least our government agencies and should rely on scientific methods, scientific understandings that cold desert cannot be made into woodland.
Absolutely.
Grasslands cannot be converted into forests. Grasslands are grasslands. They are unique. We have
the
wolves.
cheetah used to live there, right?
So
I mean, even the new cheetahs reintroduced their grassland species.
Yeah, so grasslands are so important. Like as we were talking about savanna, we are losing great Indian bustard, the last of the iconic species. We have lost it from Andhra, we have lost it from Maharashtra, we have lost it from Gujarat. Now there is only a small patch left in Rajasthan. So it is a grassland species. Wolves we are losing fast. Cheetah, of course, we have lost long back. So grasslands are very important, and we have to lend eyes to people to understand and appreciate these grasslands. How dynamic, how resilient, and how productive they are in this in not non-human sense.
Absolutely.
They are where do large mammals live? They mostly are in grasslands. They have composite.
Yeah, so don't make them into little forests, right? By planting the wrong species.
Yes, please don't occupy those shrublands and grasslands and into creating them into plantations.
So let me move to the biggest possible ecosystem that I foresee in India today, which is the city, urban India. We all live in urban India. We love urban India. It gives us so much convenience and pleasure and security. But on the other hand, if we are to actually cradle ecologies, whether we look at a city in one ecology or in the other, what do you do? Because, we have homes everywhere. So how do you think we should look at this?
So that's again a very good question, because cities, we are becoming in urban India soon, as you said. Are we planning for more cities?
I don't know.
So we don't have even the basic plans for the the urbanization that is happening. So However, this is also a great opportunity. We have so many architectural schools. Today, we are in a very good position. We have young minds, young people who have access to internet, and so on and so forth. We can plan. We can plan at a very rapid pace. And with the planning, we'll have to think about wild. All our 300, 400 years journey has been to eliminate wild from our existence. Today we have come to a point where we are appreciating, we are understanding, we are really finding an urge in our being to be with wild, to nurture wild, to be associated with wild. We be wonder at wild landscape. We are getting sanity there. We are emotional connect there. There are healing walks that are happening in the wild areas. So there is a growing this yin yang phenomena where there is a rise of a kind of a movement, so to say, to connect to the wild. And cities like Delhi, Bombay, big cities can make way for this understanding. And in my view, the way to go forward is to plan wild in the city. You have to think of the urban wilds, you have to think about urban microhabitats, you have to think about urban corridors for the wild. So it is like you plan for your roads, you plan for your traffic, you plan for your human settlements, you plan for your industry, you also plan for your wilds. And those wilds are your gardens, your roads, your
Roadsides, really.
roadsides, canals,
Yeah.
waterways, drainage patterns, drainage systems, and also these parks, lots and lots of parks. Delhi is fortunate. We have Aravali Biodiversity Park on the Vasant Vihar, Vasant Kunj area. We have Asola, we have Sanjeevan, we have Central Ridge, Northern Ridge, JNU. So all those needs connectivity.
Yeah.
So we can plan for all of this, and you would be totally surprised how wildlife lives. And people are craving for not big animals anymore. Like tiger and elephant. They are not.
Anyway, we're scared. What if a tiger shows up?
But there is growing curiosity to look at mushrooms.
Yeah.
Growing curiosity. There are mushroom walks happening in the city. So many in the monsoon months. You have butterfly walks happening. Recently, a friend of mine called me up and he said, are you seeing this wave of butterflies? And I said, yes, in the Aravali Biodiversity Park and Aravali Nagar, when we were seeing this wave of butterflies happening. And I said, what are you observing? And he said, on top of buildings, these butterflies are crossing.
On top.
Imagine from Rohini area in the northwest Delhi, these butterflies are moving across the city like a wave, crossing these 3-story, 4-story buildings and, going from east to west direction.
Wow.
And we were blind to all this. Now we are seeing that this...
Because we are more interested in these things.
Now we are more interested in it. Now we are seeing a connection in it. Now we see a purpose to life in it.
Yeah.
That is what makes life so beautiful, when we start seeing wilderness in where we are.
And that's what we have to embrace through rewilding and through restoration.
Absolutely. Like if I ask anybody in the city, like what are the native plants of Delhi? I think there would be like 50, 60 people who can, say some names, but there would be many who wouldn't be able to know that what were the plants of Delhi.
Yeah.
So there is growing awareness now. What grows on the ridge doesn't grow near the Yamuna. What grows in Lodi Garden, what should have grown in the Lodi Garden area, was not growing on the JNU area.
Yeah.
We have good 70 plus species of trees that Delhi had, which is not there in our ornamental planting, in our CPWD, PWD planting schemes. Even in our colony gardens, they are out. People don't even know about them. Yeah.
So we should really be looking as a country in ecological restoration, rewilding, and kind of mainstreaming at least indigenous species and a multitude of species, not only trees, is from what I understand. So every PWD needs to be reoriented. But also what I understand from you is that it's got to be ecologically relevant. So really in Indore and in Delhi or maybe in Muradabad, you really can't have the same
Absolutely.
things which you currently have. Kaneer everywhere.
Absolutely. So the term native plants, that of course there is a growing awareness about native plants, but what we are seeing is that what is native to India is not necessarily planted, can be planted everywhere. Oh, you would be surprised that India has roughly 2,000 species of trees, of which we don't even use 100 species in our gardening, in our uh, plantations. We don't use them
Wow.
more than that.
Yeah, that's quite shocking.
It's
That's a
really
nice piece of data.
Yeah, so what grows in Northeast India or various hills, valleys of the Northeast India will not grow in Jaisalmer or Bardhain or or even in South India. So we have to understand micro habitats. We have to understand plants niches, and there is a growing community now of people who are sharing all this information. And you brought this question about rewilding. It's essentially to look at these patches and then rewild them based on them.
Absolutely. And so I want to end on a more personal note, which is can you think of any kind of rewilding or restoration project that you greatly admire? I mean, personally, I really enjoy the Gurgaon Biodiversity Park, but I'm aware you're doing something near Jaipur, which is completely different and only grasses. I have loved walking through the Rao Jodha Park of Pradeep Krishan. It's given me great amounts of joy. But what about you?
So I think we are doing several projects in Gurgaon with my partner. I am Gurgaon. Incredible group of
Yeah, of course, we're quite amazing.
Amazing. So we are doing 7 projects in Gurgaon, we are doing 200-acre Aravali Nagar one, 100-acre Sikandarpur forest. We are doing Badshapur forest corridor. We are doing Ghata Bandh. So there are many projects.
So you might actually end up being far greener than what we imagine Gurgaon to be.
Not greener, but wild.
Wilder. Yeah, wilder. Wilder, but without a sewage system.
Without. But I think around the country there are interesting projects that are happening. People are doing. There are good groups who are working. Like you said, Raujodha Park Pradeep has been a pioneer. Kishan Bagh Pradeep and we have done that together. Then there is an organization called Nature Conservation Foundation.
Of course.
In Balparai, Western Ghats. Amazing work. Like tea gardens are very, very important areas. They have large holdings of land. So they're working and influencing and ecologically restoring degraded patches in these tea estates. Similarly, in the Northeast, we have people who are looking at tea gardens and restoring them. So Arunachala. So there are several of these, groups, individuals who are working in small pockets, so to say, in this country. And they have come together and created, we have this beautiful organization we have created called Ecological Restoration Alliance.
Yeah, I was going to ask you, you've named all these organizations, but it's a new field. And the knowledge is with you. How do you plan to expand this knowledge?
So we have come together. I mean, it was spearheaded by Divya and Sridhar from Nature Conservation Foundation. They kind of got all of us together and created this alliance called Ecological Restoration Alliance. Now, the mandate of alliance is that we become a resource center for them, not a center, but resource people, resource center for anybody who wants to do rewilding work, restoration, ecological restoration work in the country. They are most welcome to our sites to learn from us. All on voluntary basis, mostly on voluntary basis. Come and learn, and we have conferences every year. We have conferences where we get interesting people to talk about ecology. But also, we are also creating workshops. Like on 10th, 11th, 12th, we have a workshop on ecological restoration happening at various parts of the country. Like we are holding in Gurgaon. similar one such workshops. We have already done another. We are also trying to create modules for the forest department, for the training institutes, state forest departments, and the Indira Gandhi Forest National Forest Academy. We are trying to create a module so that our forest department is the biggest holder of land.
Yeah.
They I think the young generation has to embrace ecological restoration, rewilding. So our learnings, I think we would like to share with them. We would like to bring the science associated with the ecological restoration, rewilding, and share it with them. And there's huge hope with young people who take it on, and there's lots to do in this world.
There's definitely lots to do. So, on that note, thank you so much. Thank you for your time and thank you for your insights and knowledge.
Thank you.
It was a pleasure talking to you.
It was a pleasure talking to you too.
Thank you.